All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to launch day of the California Dream for All program. I am super excited to have you all here today. I have been waiting for this program for a few months, and then 3 weeks ago, we found out it was launching very soon, and here we are. So it is officially launch day. Super excited to have you guys who are here live. A lot of people have been watching my recorded webinars on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you're not live, no problem. If you are live, post any comments into chat, post any questions into chat. Good evening, Alonzo. If you are watching recorded or on any social media platform, then feel free to post your comments on there and I will update you and answer your questions. I'm super excited for today. I see one person here is actually one of my first 3 buyers who are already in contract. So congratulations to my 3 buyers that are in contract for this program. I probably have 20 plus buyers that are currently shopping for homes and actively writing offers. And I'm super excited about this program. So what I want to do really today is I want to go over, for those of you who have been through this presentation before, some of it is a repeat, some of it is new information. And I'm going to talk about it in a little bit different way to help better understand some of the details and things that we need to know. There are some things that changed from what my expectations were over the last few weeks, and most of the things stayed the same. So let's go ahead and dive in and cover what we're going to cover. Remember, lots of time for Q&A, so make sure that you ask me questions. So first of all, what is the California Dream for All program? We're going to talk about what the program is, what the pros and the cons are of the program, why you should do it and why you shouldn't, who can do it and who can't, and what the best ways are to utilize it. So my goal is to use this webinar as reference material going forward for future buyers who are interested in this program so they can refer back and get a really good understanding of how this works. So we're also going to talk about not only is it a good idea, the pros and the cons, but what are the qualification rules, and then how to make your dream a reality, and we'll have time for Q&A for those who are watching live. All right. So introduction, what is the California Dream for All program? It is a shared appreciation loan that is to help first-time home buyers become a homeowner. Now, what does all that mean? It essentially means that the state of California figured out that one of the biggest hurdles stopping people from home ownership is coming up with a down payment. Well, that was solved a long time ago with down payment assistance programs. The problem is those down payment assistance programs didn't address the significant increase in interest rates that we've been seeing, combined with the significant increase in housing prices. Now, house prices over the last year have leveled off, but that's because interest rates took off, and it made affordability, your ability to make the monthly payment, very challenged. And this program addresses not only down payment, but it addresses affordability and makes it really affordable for people to become first-time home buyers. What shared appreciation means is you don't pay interest, you pay a percentage of what the house price goes up. So in a way, that's really good, and in a way, that's really bad. With interest, you know, hey, I'm only going to pay this much money back down the road, but you pay it no matter what. With appreciation, the state is basically saying, hey, I'm going to pay for 20% of your home. You're going to pay for 80% of it. So when you sell the house, you get 80% because that's what you paid for, and I get 20% because that's what I paid for. It's no different than if you bought a house with your sister and you guys went 50-50 on the purchase price of the home. Maybe your sister paid cash for her price. You financed your half. When you sell the house, your sister gets half of what she sold the house, what the house sells for. You get the other half of what the house sells for. Well, in this case, instead of splitting it 50-50, you're splitting it 80-20. You're paying for 80% of the home. The state's paying for 20% of the home. You get 80% of how much the price goes up. The state gets 20% of how much the price goes up. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So that is, hold on one second here. That is a very simple explanation of how this appreciation program works. Now let's draw, by the way, if when you sell the house, refinance or pay off the loan, if the house value didn't go up, you only pay back what you borrowed from the state. If the price didn't go up, there's nothing to split. So really, there's no risk in that way either. All right, let's dive in and let's talk about what changed on launch day. So what did we learn? What did I learn? So Chris is saying that's 80% of the profit. It's 80% of the increase in price. I'll get more detail. I'll cover some numbers for you, Chris. But it's 80% of the difference between what you bought it for and what it's worth the time that you sell it / pay off the state. All right, so what did I learn that's new for launch day? First of all, clarification on the benefits of being under 80% of the area median income. It's actually a pretty big deal because I had said previously that the only benefit of being under 80% area median income is you have a little bit of a savings off of your repayment to the state. And there's actually some bigger savings, and I'll share those with you in a moment. The second thing is clarification on credit score requirements. So that was probably the biggest thing that I had incorrect from the initial information that I received. There are very, very firm credit score requirements, and we're looking at 680 is the minimum credit score for most people, and that is not averaged. So even though Fannie Mae offers averaging, this program does not participate in the averaging of the credit score that Fannie Mae offers. And in some cases, you can be as low as a 660 credit score, but it's the worst scoring borrower. So when we have 3 credit scores we look at for each person, we throw away that person's highest and that person's lowest, and we come up with their middle. And then another borrower, we throw away their highest and lowest, and we use their middle. Then we use the worst of the 2 people. In other words, everybody on the loan has to meet the minimum credit score. So I'll give you more clarification on credit scores in a couple minutes. The next thing I learned, rates are as good as I had hoped. So I'll show you where rates are, but I was concerned they could have been higher, and they're not. They are absolutely as good as I had hoped, and I'm super, super excited about that. And then I got details on Homebuyer Education, and we got some clarification, although I didn't put it on this slide. We got clarification about multi-unit properties. I said I did not expect multi-unit properties to be allowed, and I was right. They are not allowing multi-unit properties. So it's owner-occupied, single-family homes, although they are allowing accessory dwelling units, they're allowing condominiums and townhomes, and they are allowing mobile / modular, essentially a manufactured home on a permanent foundation where you own the land. All right, here's the other thing I learned. There's significantly less money available. I'll get into more details on how much less money, but there's a lot less money than what I had expected. So I said before, it's first come, first serve, and I'm worried about the money running out, and it's even worse. So we'll get into those details, but definitely time is of the essence. All right, so let's go over how does shared appreciation work? What exactly is this? So let's get my handy dandy pointer out here, and let me share with you. Dylan, let me see what your question is. My home, 20%, kind of. So Dylan, let me go through my example right now. And then my example is at 500,000, and then I'll double check and see if it matches what you just said. So first of all, if you buy a home that is $500,000, you're borrowing $400,000 and making payments on that. The state is giving the loan for the $100,000 that you're not making payments on it. So $500,000 home, you're only making payments on $400,000. 5 years later, the price goes up to $640,000. So the appreciation, the difference between what you bought it for and what you're selling it for is $140,000. So you get 80% of that because you took 80% from the state. By the way, if you take less, let's say you only needed 10% from the state, then you only give the state 10% of your appreciation. So the less you take from the state, the less you have to share down the road. So we got $140,000, 112 goes to you, 28,000 goes to the state. So when you sell the home, you're paying back the 100 you originally got. You always pay them back the 100,000, and then you pay them back 20% of what the house has gone up. So you pay them back $128,000. But your share is $142,000. Now, how in the world are you getting $142,000 when only $112,000 came to you? Because you paid down your balance. So what happens is every single month you're paying down your mortgage. That in 5 years is about $30,000 of a pay down. So instead of owing $400,000 in 5 years, you owe $370,000. So you're not giving up the equity, because people have asked me, John, I'm giving up a percentage of the equity. No, you're not. Because if you gave up a percentage of the equity, the state would get a percentage of that $30,000 you paid down. That's not true. The state only gets a percentage of the appreciation, or the difference between the purchase price and what it's worth when you pay off the state. So that basically your $142,000 is your $112,000 share plus $30,000 that you've paid down on the first mortgage that you get to have back. So every time you make a monthly payment as a homeowner, you're getting a portion of that money back in the future because you owe less money. When you're a renter, that doesn't happen. The landlord does not share any of the appreciation, nor do they share any of your mortgage or your rent payment that you paid, even though it's paying down part of their principal. All right, Dylan, let me see how you wrote this and let's see if yours makes sense. Buy a home for 400,000, 20% of that is 80. Mine was 500 and 20% is 100. Sell the home for 800,000. So 20% of that is 160. No, that's not true. So if you, and I know you brought this up before I went through my example, but you said if they bought the home for 400,000, you sell it later for 800, the increase is $400,000. So they get back their 20% of the increase, which is $80,000, plus they get back their original money they gave you, which was $80,000. So yes, technically they, using the math a little different, you're right. They would get $160,000 grand total from the sale of the home. Their original 80 plus 20% of the appreciation, and therefore they would get 20% of the grand total. But that isn't true always. So your method got to the same answer. The way I'm talking about it is really the more accurate way. But very simply, yes, you are thinking of it the right way. All right. Remember, guys, if you have questions, feel free to post them into chat. So now when you sell the home, you again bought it at 500, sold it at 640, you walk away with your 142, that 128,000 goes back into the fund with the state. They use that money to help the next person buy a home. So this money is always being recycled by the state and put back towards the next homeowner. Okay, so let's be real about the pros and the cons of this program. The first thing is, let's go through some of the pros. You're only making payments on 80% of the price. Housing prices are high, interest rates are high. Now, I think housing prices are not high in the sense that they're going to go down. I think housing prices are actually staying flat because interest rates are high. And as soon as interest rates come back down, house prices are going to shoot up. There's not enough homes for the number of people that want them. If you want more detail on that, check out my YouTube channel. Just search John Loan King. I have a video from back in January that I spent 45 minutes talking about why I think housing prices are going to accelerate in the coming years, and also what I think is happening with interest rates. But the truth is, you're only making a payment on 80% of the price. So this program helps you compared to if you bought without this program, where you have to make a payment on 100% of the price. Okay. The second thing is it offsets the affordability problem from inflation. Because interest rates have shot up so much, lots of home buyers are saying, I'm out. I'm simply going to wait until house prices come down or interest rates come down. I already said I don't think house prices are going to come down. I do think interest rates will. The problem is as soon as they come down, all of those people are jumping back in to buy homes and the prices are going to skyrocket. So jumping in now is going to help you to get ahead of that curve. Also, there's no mortgage insurance. You can come up with zero down payment. You just have to pay your own closing costs and you pay no mortgage insurance. Or you can use the money to pay closing costs, in which case you have to pay mortgage insurance because we're using some of that 20% down to put towards your closing costs. I'll cover that in a little bit, but you have the option of coming in with almost no money out of pocket, but you have to pay mortgage insurance. All right. One of the other pros, you can buy a better home. If you're in a position where you can only afford a payment on a $400,000 home, and that's with $10,000 out of pocket, you could buy a $475,000 to $500,000 home for the exact same payment so that you can afford a better home. All right. And Stacy, I'll cover your questions in a second. And then you'll have a lower monthly payment. So let's pretend that you said, hey, John, I'm cool with a $500,000 home and I'm qualified for it and I can find a home I'm looking for at $500,000. I'm not good with that payment. That's way too high. So now you can be in a position where you can have a lower monthly payment, which Chris actually brought up. He said, can you get the 20% and put 20% of your own money down? You're ahead on the presentation, Chris. The answer is 100% yes. And as a matter of fact, what you can do is you can put as much as 30%, that's three fingers, 30% of your own money towards a down payment plus 20% from the state. So you're only making payments on 50% of the purchase price in that case. Stacy asked, what about the homes that will be available soon because the moratorium will lift? Stacy, there are nowhere near enough homes on the market right now And there are very few homes that I think are going to hit the market because of that. And with the amount of demand that we've got, I think those homes are going to be eaten up very, very quickly. So we can talk about that offline if you have further questions about it. The truth is, I don't see that making a very big difference in inventory. The other thing it allows you to do is to stop renting. Here's the truth. I said it earlier. If you're renting, you don't get any of the appreciation in your home. You don't get any money of your rent that goes back to you towards your equity down the road. So you're throwing money away as a renter, and this helps you to have to stop rent, to allow you to stop renting. Now, let's be clear about the cons. You get less money from the sale of the home. I had a person on YouTube ask me post a comment on one of my videos yesterday that said, hey, am I better off doing a VA loan or doing this shared appreciation loan? And I said, well, it's simple. It comes down to your comfort level and monthly payment. If you can afford the monthly payment on the VA loan, it does the same thing because VA requires 0 down payment. And so VA will let you finance the whole thing, but you're making the payment on 500 grand. If you can afford that payment, then go for the VA loan because you've got all of the appreciation and you're okay with that monthly payment. You're going to make more money in the long run. But if you can't afford the monthly payment, or you're in a position where it's going to stretch you too much to make that monthly payment, then you can use this program instead of the VA loan. Don Slit asked, are you able to rent out the home if you decide to? So I'll go over it in a minute. You have to occupy the home as your primary home for at least 1 year. After that, we don't care, but you have to occupy it for at least 1 year. All right, what are one of the other negatives? This is a big one. You pay 100% of the cost of selling the home. What do I mean by that? What I mean is when you sell the house, you'd buy that house for $500,000 and it's worth $600,000 when you go to sell it. So you're going to pay the state $100,000 that they originally got from you or gave you, and you're going to pay them back 20% of that 100 grand, or you're going to pay them back 20 grand. So you're paying them $120,000. You're left over with $80,000 in appreciation, but you're paying all of the fees for the sale of the home. The state doesn't split any of that. They don't cover any of that. They don't back any of that out of their calculation. Because the truth is, you might pay them off when you refinance. You might pay them off just through an inheritance. You might pay them off when you sell the home. But the state says, look, your interest is simply the total of what you bought it for compared to the total of what you sold it for. You pay me a percentage of the difference. So one of the negatives is you're paying 100% of the cost of selling the home, even though you're only getting 80% of the proceeds in selling the home. So Liliana, that's a great question. You asked, what about taxes? I have asked that question and I don't have a real clear answer. That came up last week with a client that I was talking to. So the tax consequences here, you're not going to pay taxes on the $120,000 because that is money you borrowed that you had to pay back. So realistically, in that scenario, you're going to pay, and I'm not a tax advisor, I don't play one on TV, but you're going to have gain, how much you gained on the sale of the home. They do subtract what the cost of selling the home was. They do subtract what your loan amounts were, including what you paid the state. And currently, and I expect it to continue, the federal government allows a single person to exclude up to $250,000 of gain as long as it's been their primary home for 2 of the last 5 years. If you're a married couple, that is $500,000 of exclusion. So that means the house can go up by $500,000 and you pay no taxes on it. So there's really not a big tax implication, if any, but it is an important question you'd want to talk to your tax advisor about. Okay. The other thing is you can only refinance once without triggering the repayment. Now, the good news is you can refinance once, because I was afraid you weren't going to be able to, but this program is allowing you to refinance once without triggering the repayment, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit. So let's get to one of the big negatives. How much money is there? So first of all, they're limited funds and we expect replenishment, but here's the deal. Originally, last July, the governor pledged $500 million to this program. That was going to help about 4,200 families in my estimation. And then in January, 2 months ago, and I didn't know this until last week when I started digging a little bit further, the federal or the state government had a budget issue. Even though in July they said, oh my gosh, we have a whole bunch of excess money. In January, they said, wait, now that we're looking at it, we're short. We don't have the money we thought we had. And so the governor had to cross out some promises they had made and cut some budget items. And they had to cut 40% of the money out of this program. So 40% of the money we thought was going to be there, it's already gone. We only have $300 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but here's the truth. That's only about 2,500 families that's going to help. Now, the program was designed to be able to regrow or regenerate by every year. They were going to put an extra $1 billion, double what the original amount was, well, now triple. They were going to put an extra $1 billion in there every year for 10 years. And by that time, they'd have $10.5 billion of money that was perpetually recycling itself. Well, the state doesn't have to give money they pledged. They just proved that they don't because they pledged 500 million and they only gave 300 million. So will they give us more money down the road? Maybe. When will they give it? I don't know. But there is a plan B. So Cal HFA, the authority within the within the state government that manages this program, they have the ability to borrow money on behalf of the state, and the state has to pay back the interest. So technically, Cal HFA, instead of being given the money by the state, can borrow the money, and then the state just has to pay the interest on the money that's borrowed. So that is a plan B I heard about. I have no idea if they're going to execute that right away when they run out of money or not. I don't know if there's political implications to that. So I'm not counting on that money being replenished anytime soon, but I'm hopeful that they're already thinking about it since 40% of the money they thought was going to be there is already gone. All right. How can you use the money? You can use it for up to 20%. So you get to pick how much you want to get from the state. You can get up to 20% of the price of the home to be used for down payment, and you can also choose to use it for closing costs. Now, closing costs, depending upon your price, should be anywhere from 3 to 4.5% on average, sometimes maybe upwards of 5%. So if you think about this math simply, you say, I'm going to put 15% towards down payment and 5% towards closing costs if you want to come up with very little money out of pocket. If you say, John, I'm okay with coming up with some money out of pocket, then we're better off putting 20% towards down payment so that you don't pay mortgage insurance. And then the other 5 or the other however much percentage it is, up to 5%, is coming out of your pocket to pay for the closing costs. You also, as I mentioned earlier to Chris, you also can combine up to 30% of your own money. So 30% from you, 20% from the state, that's 50% total. You're only paying on the other 50%. Liliana said, can the seller help with closing costs? Yes, they can. It's in some cases, it can be bigger than 3%, but the simplest answer is 3% is the most the seller can pay. By the way, I also learned that we can use seller credits for a temporary buy down with this program. I forgot to put it in my slideshow, but go to my YouTube channel and search under John Lone King in YouTube for temporary buy down. We can get a seller credit. I'm going to give you the 10-second example of what a temporary buy down is. If rates today are at 6.5, we can get the seller to pay money to lower your rate for the first year down to 4.5, the second year at 5.5, and the third year and after that, then you make payments at 6.5, with the thinking being that before the end of 2 years, rates should be back down in the 5s, maybe even the high 4s, and you should be able to refinance at that time. So it's a way to get a seller credit that pays for you to have a lower monthly payment for the first 2 years, which is really when we expect the rates to be the highest. And in the next 2 years, we expect interest rates to go down. So that is a great tool as you're out negotiating and asking for, again, some markets super competitive. If you're a first time, actually all of you are first time home buyers, I strongly suggest you listen to my masterclass. I did it last Thursday night. It is on my YouTube channel, John Lone King, and it's a 90-minute class that some people on here came to that class. Hopefully you can put a comment saying it was absolutely amazing. I'll send your $5 Starbucks gift card in the mail for lying and saying it was great. I'm just kidding. But anyway, if you guys came to the masterclass last week, I'd love to have a comment from you in the comments just to let everybody else know that it was worth their time. But we talk about negotiation. We talk about how to make your offer look better. We talk about the home buying process itself. So I strongly encourage you to check out my masterclass on how to buy a home that is on my YouTube channel. Okay, So let's keep going. Alonzo, thank you, Alonzo, for saying last week was informative. Candace said so too. Thanks, gang. I was feeling kind of bad, like nobody was listening or nobody really liked it. But anyway, all right, I got two people to say so. Take only what you need. That's something really important because you're paying back 20% of your appreciation if you take 20% of the purchase price, unless you're under 80% of the area median income. If you're under 80% of the area median income, you only pay back 75 cents on the dollar. I'll get to that more in just a minute. You can use the money to increase your buying power or use the money to get a lower monthly payment to get it within your budget. So let's take a look at some of the numbers. Now, this is not current interest rates. This was my example that I used over the last couple of weeks. Rates are better than this, and I'll show you the rates in a moment. So right now, what we're looking at is a $400,000 purchase price. And if you did a traditional loan buying that $400,000 home, your payment is $3,300 a month with 3% down plus closing costs is about $26,500. If you said, hey, John, I need to have I need to increase my purchase price. Well, I can switch to FHA and I can get you to $410,000 for roughly the same monthly payment and a little bit more out of pocket. But the Dream for All program is the game changer because I can get you from $400,000 to $500,000 and lower your monthly payment and lower the cash that you need out of pocket. So this is the example where we're putting the full $100,000 towards the purchase price. Your payment is $35 a month cheaper, and you've got about $4,000 less out of pocket. So it is a win, win, win using the California Dream for All program, but there's more. You can also use it to pay less out of pocket. And so this would allow you to, and I got to move my little screens here. This will allow you to purchase a home and put, let's say a $480,000 home for that same monthly payments of about $3,350 a month. And you're only coming up with about $1,500 out of pocket. Most of my buyers who have gotten into contract with this have chosen this option because even if you have the money to put out of pocket, the fact is having extra money in reserves, sitting there for a rainy day is the single biggest difference between success and failure when I've seen people not succeed in owning a home. It's because they weren't planning ahead to have extra money for simple repairs, to have extra money for things you weren't intending, or everybody does some work, buys some furniture, and they end up charging up their credit cards right after they buy the home. Keeping that extra money in your pocket saves you from having to run up the credit cards down the road. Now, how can we use the program to lower your monthly payment? Well, here's how it's going to work. If you were qualified for a $500,000 home and you said, okay, John, I'm good at $500,000, but man, I can find a house for $500,000, but I can't afford $4,200 a month. So how can I, and you're coming up with about 32 grand. So how can I get a lower monthly payment? Well, FHA has lower payments because the rates are lower and the mortgage insurance is cheaper. So you can save about $130 a month by going FHA, but you do need a few $1,000s extra out of pocket. But here's where the Dream for All program comes to the rescue, because you can buy that same $500,000 home, but you're only paying $3,300 a month. And you're coming up with less cash out of pocket. You're saving $876 a month, and you're saving $9,000 out of pocket. But wait, there's more. You can also choose to use the 5% for closing costs so that your payment is a little bit higher than it would have been, but still $700 cheaper than what the conventional loan would have been with 3% down. And you're only coming up with a little over $1,000 out of pocket. So this is where this program is a game changer to help people qualify for a loan that they otherwise would not have qualified for, or be able to buy the home that they need that they otherwise could not have been able to afford the monthly payment. All right. Now, easier way to discuss this than what I had in previous calls. So income limits. The income limits, there's two ways to look at income limits. To participate in the program at all, you must be below the county income limit. Now, I encourage you right now to scan this QR code or take a picture of the screen, or if you're on your phone right now and can't scan it, just take a screenshot right now so that you can come back and get this californiadreamforall.info/max income, because that's the same as the QR code. What that will do is it will give you the link to the lookup tool to see if you're going to be under 80% of the area median income. It's also going to give you the list per county of what the limit is in every single county. Now, again, to participate, you must have you must be below the income limit, and this is qualifying income. So if there are two people in your household that are both working, one makes 150 and the other one makes 100, but your limit in your county is 159. You can qualify with just one of you on the loan, as long as that one person's income is enough to afford the payment. I can't use the income from both people because then both people would exceed the limit. So there's ways that don't disqualify yourself because you're over the county limit, or if you're over the area median income limit. We may still be able to make it work, but the fact of the matter is you've got to let me be the expert on there, but this gives you a threshold. If you're under this maximum county limit, you can participate in the program. If you're also under this 80% income limit for the entire family that we're using to qualify, if you're under this 80% limit, then you get the extra benefits I was talking about, but I'm going to explain more in detail in a moment. So you click on the lookup tool. Once you go to this website, you'll click on the lookup tool. There's a chart, typically shows you 100%, 80%, 60%. You want to look at the 80% number. So 80% of the area median income is what you're looking for to see if you meet these special criteria where you get these 4 special benefits. John, what are the special benefits? You've had us waiting so long. Let's go through what the benefits are. First of all, the credit score minimum is lowered to 660 if you're below 80% area median income. The new credit score requirements are 680 for everybody, unless you're under 80%. Then I can use 660 credit scores. The second benefit, and this is a big one, the interest rates are lower. I'll show you the rates in a minute. The interest rates are better if you're under the 80% area median income. The third big benefit, you only pay back 3/4 of what everybody else pays back. So if the state gave you 20% of your purchase price, you're only paying back 15% of your appreciation. If the state gave you 10% of your purchase price, you're only paying back 7.5% of your appreciation. So you pay back less money if you're in this category of it being below 80% of the area median income. And the final benefit is you have lower mortgage insurance, but I don't think that's really going to apply because that only matters if you're putting less than 10% down. I can't see a situation where you'd not want to utilize a majority of this money. So that really, it is a benefit, but it's not really one anybody's going to see the benefit that anybody's going to really utilize. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. So who qualifies for the program? Hold on one quick second here. Sorry, guys, I got to fix one thing really quick. One second. All right. So the who qualifies for the program? Thank you for that little commercial break there. First-time home buyers. So Chris says, can you use this to refinance? You cannot. So this is, as a matter of fact, right here, it can only be first-time home buyers. So it's only when you are purchasing a home and only when you, Sonia, email me and I can send you a copy of the slides. So feel free. My email is john@johnloanking.com. I'll put that in here really quick. john@johnloanking.com. Nope, I misspelled it. It's Loan King. john@johnloanking.com. All right, that's better. Okay, so it's a first-time home buyer. Cannot use it for refinancing. So your timing on that question was perfect, Chris. First-time home buyer, and you cannot have ownership interest in a primary residence or resided in a home owned by your spouse during the last 3 years. I actually had a conversation with a young lady this afternoon, and she had co-signed for her father to refinance his home twice in the last 5 years, once being a year ago. Well, she was worried that that disqualified her from being a first-time home buyer. But I asked her, did you ever live in that home? And she goes, yeah, 15 years ago. And I said, have you rented, and has your name been on the lease agreement the entire time that you have been renting? And she said, yes. I said, then because I can prove that you've lived somewhere else, then I know that you didn't live in that home. You count as a first-time home buyer. Now, if your name has been on a home and you tell me, oh, John, my name's on that house, but I didn't live there, I have to prove where you did live by showing a lease agreement. If not, if I can't prove where you did live, I have to assume you lived at that home and you don't qualify. The second part of this, to be clear, there used to be a loophole that said, well, let's buy a house in my name, and then in a couple of years, we can buy another house in my spouse's name. That loophole has closed. If you lived in a home owned by your spouse, you no longer qualify as a first-time home buyer under this program. Another really, really important thing to clarify, and I've gotten this question a lot over the last 2 weeks, is this 3-year timeline is not the date from when you bought. It's the date from when you stopped living there. Either you moved out and started renting somewhere else and you rented that one out, or you sold it. You cannot have lived in the home at any time in the last 3 years of a home that you owned in order to qualify as a first-time home buyer. So just because you bought your home 4 years ago and you still own it today does not make you a first-time home buyer simply because it's been more than 3 years since you purchased. It's more than 3 years since you've occupied a home that you have had an ownership interest in. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Conventional loans only. So this doesn't qualify for FHA, VA, USDA, not even Freddie Mac. It's a Fannie Mae conventional loan. If you know anything about the mortgage world, that's a very specific set of guidelines. I'm an expert to help navigate you through those waters. So when we get to the end, there'll be a link for you on how to apply. You definitely need to apply soon. If you have not applied with me yet, you need to do that in the next few days, because this money, I'm not saying it's going to run out in days, but it's going to run out pretty quickly. So you'll get the link on how to apply, and I'll help figure out if you qualify for the loan. You must occupy within 60 days, and you must stay there for 1 year. After the year, if you want to move out, that's fine. You want to rent it out, nobody cares. Non-occupant co-signers are not allowed. John, what does that mean in English? It means your parents can't co-sign for you unless they're moving in, and they can only co-sign and move in if they haven't owned a home in the last 3 years either. In other words, everyone on the loan must live in the home, and everyone on the loan must have not occupied a home that they owned anytime in the last 3 years. All right. You got to have $1,500 to $3,000 to spend. You're going to pay for the earnest money deposit. And in a lot of markets, it's way more expensive than $1,500 to $3,000. You're going to pay for the appraisal fee. You're going to pay for inspections. Even if I pay for everything through the closing costs, through the loan, you still have to have money up front. So the bare minimum is $1,500 to $3,000. And in some markets, it may be more than that. What are the guidelines? So I consolidated this to make it a little simpler. Maybe it's a little more complicated. Yes, Dylan, everybody. So Dylan said, do the co-signers still have to live in the home for the whole year? Yes, everybody who is on the loan must be a first-time home buyer, must occupy in 60 days, and must stay for a year. All right. So if you're between a 660, Robert, no, you didn't answer that question. I'll cover that in a minute. So if your credit score is between a 660 and a 679, you're allowed to participate only if you're under 80% of the area median income and the maximum debt to income ratio is 45%. If your score is between 680 and 699, you're allowed no matter what your income is, as long as you're under the county cap, but you still have to be under 45% debt to income ratio. And if you're over a 700 credit score, you're allowed any amount of income up to the county cap. It's allowed for anybody regardless of their income level, as long as they don't exceed the county cap. And I can go up to 50% debt to income ratio. All right, Robert. So if the home value depreciates, you still pay back the state the money you borrowed, the original amount, but there's no appreciation. So there's no extra interest you owe them. You don't get a discount off of what you paid them. So you still have to pay them back. Now, if it's dropped enough that there isn't even enough money left to pay back the first mortgage in the state, then the state loses. And it's called a non-recourse debt, meaning they can't come after you later for the money. It does, it is not, you're not going to get any money out of it. Like if the state doesn't get money, you don't get money, but the state does not get any appreciation if the house value hasn't gone up. All right. So Don Slit asked, how do student loans factor in? Does it count against you? Yes, it does. And I'm actually going to talk about that in a second. So monthly growth, how you calculate a debt to income ratio, super, super simple. And this is how I walk through it with you when you and I have our one-on-one consultation. As I say, okay, Don Slit, how much income do you have? And you say, well, I make $120,000 a year. So great. So that's $10,000 a month. And then based upon where your credit score is, we determine, okay, I can spend half of that towards your debts. So I can spend $5,000 a month towards your debts. From there, I have to subtract your monthly payments. So I'm going to subtract how much do you pay currently for your car payment, how much do you pay for any credit card minimum payments, and how much do you pay for student loans? I'll get back to that calculation in a second. So if you say, oh, I got $1,000 a month between credit cards, car payments, and my student loan payments, perfect. Then your income's $10,000. I can spend up to 50% of that. So that's $5,000, and you're already spending $1,000. That leaves $4,000 a month that I would let you spend towards a house payment. It's up to you whether you're comfortable spending that or not. So that's where we end up talking about affordability and loan options, but you qualify for a mortgage payment, not for a purchase price. You qualify for, in that case, a $4,000 a month payment. Now it's a matter of, well, how much are you putting for down payment? What are the interest rates? That determines what purchase price you're going to qualify for. Now, student loans are tricky. The reason why is because student loans for right now have, a lot of them have no payment because they're deferred. And so Fannie Mae says, if you have a payment on your student loan that is defined, I'll use that payment. But if you don't have a payment that's defined, we're going to count 1% of your balance as your minimum payments. So if you have $50,000 in student loans and you're on an income-based repayment plan where you only pay $100 a month, I'm cool with that. But I have to prove that that's the payment plan you're on. If you don't have a payment plan, then I take the 50,000 times 1%, which is $500, and that's what I count as your monthly payment. Even though your payments are deferred, even though you're in forbearance, I still have to count 1%. So it's important to get on a repayment plan as early as you possibly can so that we can make sure we've got that documented. Liliana asked, can alternative credit be used? No. It has to be a traditional mortgage credit score. So we can't use credit. There's something called alternative credit, like using your car payment, or not your car, your payment history on your Netflix account, your payment history on your homeowner's insurance or renter's insurance. We can't use any of that. This requires traditional credit only. All right. Property info. Oh, I didn't click this one incorrectly. Oh, well, I'll just go all the way through it. Here we go. All right. So in the beginning, conventional loan limits. So we're up to 726,000 nationally is the loan limits. Now, high balance is okay. I have a buyer, he's actually on the call right now, who's buying in the Bay Area and is buying, the loan limit in the Bay Area is $1,089,000. So they are qualified for $1.3 million purchase price using this program. And if they buy at $1.3 million, the state provides a loan for $260,000, which gets him well below the $1,089,000 cap. As a matter of fact, I can loan him the $1,089,000 so that he doesn't have to pay any of his closing costs. So high balance is okay. And remember, the purchase price cap is different than the loan limits. So the loan limits, let's say, are 726 nationally. Some counties are higher than that. That means you in any county across the state, you could buy a $907,000 home because with the 20% from the state, you're below the $726,000 cap. Okay, so really, really important to understand that the debt to income ratio plays into this. Because if I say you qualify for a certain dollar amount, that's based on how much I expect the monthly payment to be. But if you buy in an area that has higher homeowners insurance or higher property taxes, maybe you buy in the foothills where there's higher fire insurance because you're in a high wildfire zone, well, that's going to make the payment more expensive than I'm projecting, which means I have to lower the price range that you're shopping in. All right, so one of the other things really great about this program is you get to pick the property. There are other down payment assistance programs where the down payment assistance program only has certain properties. We don't care. As long as it's a single family home, I'll explain some, well, actually right here. It's got to be a single family home, one unit. It can be a condo, it can be a PUD. Guest houses and granny units are okay. Not as a standalone, but meaning you can have a home with a guest house or a granny unit, that's fine. And we will allow manufactured homes as long as they're on a permanent foundation and you own the land, but the debt to income ratio is limited to 45% regardless of your credit score for manufactured homes. All right, Homebuyer Education. This is something that's new, not new, I mentioned it before, but I didn't have the details before. Two types of Homebuyer Education. The first type is an online course. It costs $100 and it takes 8 hours. One of the borrowers has to take that class, not both. So you got to Rochambeau, you got to do something, figure out who's going to take out the trash versus who's going to do the home buyer class. But only one buyer has to do the home buyer education. It costs $100. It takes 8 hours. I believe you can break up the 8 hours, but you can go to scan the QR code on the right. I also have the link down here. So californiadreamforall.info/education. So if you are pre-approved with me right now and you're out shopping, if you're one of my buyers who's in contract or trying to get into contract, you need to go do both of these educations. The first one is the longest one. I do not know the time on the second one, but I'll explain in a second. The first one's the one that's going to take 8 hours. It costs $100. Again, I'm pretty sure you can break it up into segments, but don't quote me on that. So check the guidelines on it. But when you check the guidelines, click on the link and you'll get the link to the company and it'll explain everything. It includes a 1 hour one-on-one session. So it must be through the company that's on my website, which is the same company on Cal Heffa's website. There's a second type of home buyer education, and that is education about how shared appreciation works. Because the state does not want you participating in this program and then coming back in 5 years and saying, what do you mean I owe you $140,000? I thought that was a gift. Wasn't a gift. I'm making it clear it's not a gift. The state wants to make sure that they can certify that you've been through training and that you know that this is not a gift. This is not free money. And so they're going to educate you on that. It is free. It is online only. Okay. So go to californiadreamforall.info/education or scan the QR code on the right. If you're watching this on your phone, take a screenshot really quick so you can capture that information because I'm about to move on from this screen. Or scan the QR code to the right. Okay, interest rates. Woohoo! All right, let's dive into interest rates. These are today's interest rates. Let me be very, very clear. These rates change daily. Of my 3 buyers that are in contract, I only got one of them locked today because we cannot lock on the first day. We have to get a certain duration through the process before I can lock the interest rate. But here's where we're at right down here at the bottom. So the Dream for All program, the standard rate lock for everybody, unless you're low income, is 6.375. But if you're below 80% of the area median income, today's rate was 6%. Okay, market rates, if you go to quicken.com right now and look up market rates today, the rates are at 6.5. We're a smidgen below market rates, which is exactly what I was hoping for because it matches this program right here. This is pretty much what I expected Cal HFA to match. But you can see there's some other programs that are a lot more expensive. And I was a wee bit nervous that we might be matching one of those programs. We're not. So we're in the best case I could expect. I didn't expect way below market, but I expected right at market and a smidge below. And that's exactly what I got. So I'm super, super happy. But please, please, please understand these rates change daily. And so the rate is not locked automatically when you get into contract. It takes me couple, 3-4 days from the date I get your contract to get everything settled in my system before I can lock the rate at Cal HFA. When the rate is locked, that's when your money is reserved for you. So we got notification last year on a different program about 5 days before it ran out of money that we only had until Wednesday of the following week to lock interest rates. So there's no worry if I waited a day or so. I'm not waiting on purpose. I just have to get everything lined up. There's no worry we're going to run out of money the next morning. They're going to give us a few days notice, but it is critical that if you're not in escrow when they give us that notice, you need to get an escrow right away. And that isn't always within your control. So that's how the reservation process works. This is where interest rates are right now. All right. So Melissa says, does that mean if our pre-approval was at 6? Yes. So a lot of people, Melissa got pre-approved on the program last week. I pre-approved her at 6.99 because I was worried about rates being a little bit higher. And so I was more conservative on my calculations. And Melissa was begging me all last week, John, can I go a little bit higher? And yes, Melissa, I'm not saying yes to you on how much higher, but I will be working on that for you. And for anyone else who got pre-approved at a higher rate and you want to stretch that limit, I'm working through those right now to help get you to a higher price. So yes, that is 100% correct. And that is really, really good news. Remember though, rates change daily. So it could go up to 7%. I definitely have seen these rates upwards of 7%. I'm hopeful we're on a little bit of a stable to downward trend on interest rates right now. And if you like to stay on top of what's happening with interest rates, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every Friday or Saturday morning at the latest, I post a market update that gives you details on what happened the prior week and what I think is happening in the coming week with interest rates and the market. Okay. Melissa asked, how long do you think we have before these funds run out? I definitely am more concerned than I was before. I think, we've got a few months in my best estimation, because there just isn't that much inventory out there, and that's what's going to hold us back the most. But we don't have the time I thought we did. I was guessing 6 to 9 months when we had 500 million. So I'm thinking we could run out in 3 months, in my opinion. It is hard to tell right now, and so I'm only guessing. Chris says, do rates decrease if the down is greater than 20%? No. The good news, bad news. The rate is the rate is the rate. Whether you have a 681 credit score or whether you have an 811 credit score, this is your rate. Whether you're putting 15% down or 50% down, the rate is the rate. So you're getting exactly the same rate, you're getting exactly the same fee. Speaking of fee, these Dream for All loans all come with 2 points. If you don't know what a point is, go back and watch my masterclass from last Thursday and I'll explain it more in detail. But what you're going to notice is right here at the bottom, and for my buyer in the Bay Area that I think is on the call right now, this is the number you pay if you're in a high balance loan county and you're using the high balance limit. In other words, it's a higher risk loan. They're putting more eggs in that basket. And so instead of paying 2 points, you're paying an extra fee. And I typically estimate about 1.5 points for that fee because it changes daily. So that fee will be different depending upon the day we lock. But if you're in a high balance county and we're doing a high balance loan amount, then you can check the CalHFA website to see how much that fee is on any particular day. Sonia said, do you have to be a California resident for a certain number of years? What if it's someone who's moving to California? What a great question. I've been talking about this for 3 weeks. I've answered millions of questions, maybe not that many, and nobody's asked me that, and I haven't even thought of that question. The answer is no, it doesn't matter. Some down payment assistance programs care if you are a resident of a particular city or county for a certain period of time. This program doesn't care. So all that matters is that you're buying a home in California that is owner occupied, and that's it. You could buy a home in Lake Tahoe and work in Reno. I don't really care. You can work in a different state. You can work remotely and your job's in New York. I don't care, because your occupancy is here in California. You could be moving here and this can be your first purchase here in California. No requirement for how long you've been in the home. Sonia gets a prize for the question that surprised me the most, because I had not even thought about that. And that is a really, really good question. So great job, Sonia. All right. So let's keep going. All right. Come on, John, next screen. There you go. All right, so when do you pay back the money? Liliana, where do we find out what tier we are in regards to income? You call me. So when we set up and do your loan application, I'll go through that with you. But if you go back earlier in the slides, there was a slide that I had, and this replay, by the way, will be available tomorrow on my YouTube channel as well. It's on there, but it's California Dream for All CaliforniaDreamForAll.info/max income. I think that's what I called it. Anyway, I'm not going to go backwards, Liliana, but you can email my office and we can get you the link. It's that simple. If you keep the house, do you have to refi? That is a great question, and I'm literally going to cover that right now. So this is one of the areas that I got a lot of questions when people who have attended this webinar like you right now talked to me a few days later, and I said, what questions do you have about the program? Almost all of them said, okay, John, what happens if I never refinance and never sell the home? That's the only part I'm not clear about. So Don Slit's kind of asking that right now and saying, if you keep the house, do you have to refi? The answer is no. But let me go through these slides and I'll answer that question as part of this conversation. And then hopefully it will make sense. And then you can ask me the question again if it doesn't. So 3 triggering events. By the way, there's a couple extra triggering events, but these are the 3 that matter. The other ones have to do with not performing. If you go into default, then you're not making your payment, if you transfer the ownership to somebody else, etc. But really what you're doing is you're selling the home. And when you sell the home, they use the sales price to determine the amount of shared equity. So the owner, the seller, covers all of the real estate fees and closing costs, because the state gets 20% of the gross appreciation. So simply, hey, you bought the house for 500, You're selling it for 700, you made 200 grand. So we're going to take the money we loaned you, plus we're going to take 20% of the 200 grand that it went up. That's 40,000. The rest belongs to you. If you refinance, so the first thing is, what I'm super excited about is this program will allow you to refinance one time without triggering repayments. Now, what does that mean? That means that if rates fall from 6.5 right now, 6.3 right now to 5, you could refinance. Problem is that if you choose to repay the state, and you may want to, that's the other thing people were confused. They said, do I have to not pay back the state on the first refi? You can pay the state back if you choose, or you can not pay the state back. So when the rate falls from 6.3 to 5, and you say, okay, John, I want to refi, I'm going to offer you the choice. Are you doing this because you want to save money off your monthly payments? Or are you okay with the monthly payment? Because if you're okay with the monthly payment, let's buy out your partner. Even on the first refinance, if there's enough equity in there, your payment may not drop at all, or it may not drop very much. It might even go up a little bit, but you've paid off the state and they no longer get a percentage of the appreciation. So when you refinance at any point, you have the first refinance you do, you have the option, do I want to take just refinancing the money that I owe on the mortgage and lower the rate on that, which is going to give you the biggest monthly payment drop? Or do I want to increase my loan amount and make payments now on the full price of the home to buy out my partner in the state, and you pay them the appreciation that they've earned through that moment? Okay. When you refinance and you pay off the state, whether you choose to do that the first time or the second time you refinance, you have to pay off the state. The state will order their own appraisal. Now, they might do an appraisal, they might do an online valuation, but the state's determination of value through their third party is final. They've made it clear in the documentation. You're not going to be able to argue and say, well, no, I think the house right now is worth less than that, so therefore you should get your portion. That's not a good idea. That's not a good idea for them. They can't manage that. Great idea for you, but they're going to be super clear that they will not negotiate on that price. Heather said, can you buy out the appreciation earlier, but the payment will likely go up? Yeah, you can buy it out at any point as long as you qualify for the new mortgage. So buying out the state has to be through a refinance unless you have a bunch of cash in a pocket. You know, if you get an inheritance, you can use that money to buy out the state at any point in time. You don't have to refinance to buy them out, but most people, that's the only place they're going to get the money to be able to buy them out. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, ask questions if you need help with that, or if it's not super clear. Here's the part that was unclear previously in my previous meetings, and that is what happens in 30 years. So when you pay off the loan in 30 years, that's when you have to pay the state back. The money is never forgiven. The money is never free. It's never forgotten about. Now, in 30 years, they're going to say, okay, you bought that house for $500,000. It's now worth $1.2 million. So you've gained $700,000. We get the $100,000 that you loaned plus $140,000. You owe us $240,000. Now your house is worth $1.5 million or $1.2 million. So at that moment, Cal Haffa will order an appraisal or an online valuation, and then you write them a check for the original loan plus the percentage of the appreciation. Okay. Most people at that point would refinance to buy out the state. Now, don't be confused by the word refinance. You're like, John, I already paid off my first mortgage. So what do you mean refinance? You'd come to me and I'd give you a new mortgage for the $240,000 you owe the state. And then you have a really low monthly payment to pay back that $240,000. But here's the deal. I don't ever expect anybody to get to that point because rates right now are high. Even if you waited until rates fell down the road and you refinanced, if rates got to 4%, at some point, you're going to be able to refinance and keep the payment the same as what you're paying today and get rid of your partner in the state. And you should absolutely do that. So I will be following up with you. You're stuck with me once you do a loan, not literally, but figuratively. I want to earn your business and make sure that you stay with me and that anybody you know, you send to me as well. So I'm going to make sure to keep track of your circumstances and make sure that you don't end up in that position. And to be clear, the maximum you ever owe the state in interest is 2.5 times the original balance. Now, that's plus the original balance. So if they gave you 100,000, the most you ever owe them in interest is 250,000. So you owe them the 100 plus you owe them the 250. All right. So Robert has a question. Could I do payments before and refinance to lower payment, or does that have to be a lump sum? You can pay them anytime you want, but there's no point in doing it because all you're doing is giving them free money. You're better off keeping that in the bank and earning interest on it, or investing it, or using it to pay down on your first mortgage. But yes, you technically can pay them down anytime you want, but they don't stop earning their 20% until you've paid them in full, including the 20%. So if you pay them little bits, and you get down to owing them $1, they won't accept that last dollar until you pay them the $1 and the 20% of what your house has grown since you bought it. Hope that makes sense. Dennis says, how does the payback work? In either of those scenarios, it's always a one-time payment, or is it a fixed monthly payment? And is there any extra interest in this loan if making monthly payments? So, all right, it is always a one-time payment that you're paying back the state. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a one-time payment because you sold the home and you're using the proceeds of your home to pay it off, or you're refinancing the home and we're increasing your loan amount to pay off the state. Okay, so either one of those scenarios is what's going to happen. It's only if you end up at the 30-year mark and you've never refinanced that you're going to have a lump sum due that you don't have the money to pay it, and no, they aren't accepting monthly payments. At that moment, you have to pay them back. And there is no interest that's charged on any payments you make. It's just lowering, you're just giving them free money, because if you paid them back half the money, they don't decrease the appreciation. So I want to be super clear about this. I think I'm reading between the lines of what Dennis is saying here. I made it clear at the beginning, earlier, that if you only want 10% from the state, you only have to pay the state 10% of your appreciation. If you take 20% from the state, you pay the state back 20% of your appreciation. But if you take 20% from the state and in a year you pay them back half of it, so you only owe them 10%, they keep having the rights to 20% of the increase. Once you start the loan, whatever percentage they get is the percentage. If you pay them anything, all it does is give them money early. It doesn't save you from increased appreciation sharing with the state. That shared amount happens no matter what. Robert says, are you allowed to do a 15-year fixed as well? No, you can pay faster to pay it off in 15 years. So I can show you what that payment's going to be, but CalHFA doesn't offer a 15-year. It's a 30-year fix. This is designed to help first-time home buyers get into a home. Most first-time home buyers don't have the ability to pay that much extra of a monthly payment. So I can show you what it would take to pay it back in 15 years, but there is no 15-year option. There is no lower interest rate for being a 15-year loan. All right, I know we're up against 8 o'clock. I've got a few more things that I want to go over, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. All right, so the last slide I really have that is important information is really understanding the difference. When somebody says, oh my gosh, John, this is a horrible idea because I'm throwing away all of this money to the state. What they're forgetting is how much money you saved in monthly payments. So allow me to go through this quick scenario with you so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So if we did a 3% down payment loan, a conventional loan at a 6.99 rate and a $500,000 balance, $500,000 price, your payment would be $4,200 a month. That means after 5 years, you'll have spent $252,000 in monthly payments. When you sell the house, let's pretend you sell it for $700,000. Now your balance has dropped. It started at $485,000 and it dropped to $442,000. So that means that your gross proceeds, because you're not sharing any money with the state, so you've spent $4,200 a month, making $252,000 in monthly payments, and you walk away with $257,000 in your pocket. Now, what if you did that same situation, but instead of putting your own down payment money, you get a $400,000 loan from the state? So first of all, you had $15,000 extra in your pocket that I didn't even put into this slide. I totally forgot about that until now. So I'm going to add that in just a second. But your monthly payments are $3,325, which means you're only spending $199,500. Okay, that your sales price is the same, $700,000. Your balance at 5 years, it started at $400,000. Your balance is now $376,000. But now you have to pay back the state 140. You pay back the 100,000 they provided you in the beginning, plus $40,000, which is 20% of the $700,000 price. But here's the deal. You also have extra money sitting in your bank because you have $52,000 that you didn't pay in monthly payments. Because if you went this scenario, you would have written checks for $252,000. Over here, you're only paying for $199. And I totally forgot to put in this equation. You had to pay 3% down or $15,000 out of your pocket plus closing costs. In this scenario, you're paying $0 down. You're only paying the closing costs. So closing costs being equal, they're close to equal. You're $15,000 ahead by not having to put that 3% down out of your pocket. So in this case, your gross proceeds are $236,000, but I forgot about the $15,000 you didn't put out of your pocket, which means you end up, you end up technically about $21,000 less. But once I put back in, I knew this number was better than I thought. Once you factor back in the $15,000 you had to spend over here for your down payment, because you're buying it for $500, you're borrowing $485. So you're putting $15,000 out of pocket for down payment. In this scenario, the state's putting the entire down payment, so you're not putting anything in. You actually have $251,000 because you have 52 grand extra in savings because of the lower monthly payment you made. You have $15,000 extra in savings because you got to not make that upfront down payment. You actually ended up with $251,000 versus $257,000. Literally cost you $6,000 in this scenario, was the only cost to you in the end, but you had more flexibility in your monthly payments all along. I think this program is a win. And if we can get you into the program, get you qualified and get you a home before the money runs out, I think it's a game changer. All right. So how do we move forward? You need to start by applying with me. So if you have not applied with me, scan this QR code or go to apply.johnloneking.com. You'll go to my website. You can actually click the App Store and download my mobile app. It's got some cool calculators on it, and you can use your phone as a scanner. So you can take a picture in my app and it uploads it directly and securely to me. So scan this QR code or go to apply.johnloneking to make your dream a reality. And how are we going to help your family make a dream their reality? I need your help. I need your help. Dennis, I'll get your question in a second. Yes, and Dennis, you're right. You're paying 100% of the closing costs. So when we're comparing that, you're right. You're paying 100% of the closing costs either way. So it's still even because on those two scenarios, you're paying 100% of the closing costs on the 700 grand if you didn't use the state, and 100% of the closing costs on the 700 grand if you did use the state. So it's actually still equal, no matter which way you look at it. You're still only $7,000 lighter. Again, it depends on how much the house appreciates, but it's not that bad of a deal. All right, what are you looking at right now? You are looking at a QR code that will send you to my YouTube channel. I have two YouTube channels. I have one channel dedicated to this program. This QR code will send you to that channel. What it's actually going to send you to is a playlist of 28 videos that I've recorded. They're all about a minute and a half that go into a lot of the details, a lot more in detail than what I talked about tonight. So if you know somebody who you think this would be a good idea for, or if you just want to tell everybody you know by posting it on social media, take a picture of this QR code and go to my YouTube channel. If you don't know or you can't get it, email me and I'll send it to you as a link. But this is a great way to help share this with other people that you know that want to be able to get qualified under this program. Don Slit asked, is there an application fee? Currently, no. I want to be really clear. Credit report fees tripled at the beginning of the year. So I wrote a check last month for $4,000 for credit reports for clients that didn't buy homes. That's the truth. So are we likely to start collecting upfront for credit reports and collecting $50 or $75 at the time that somebody applies? Some mortgage companies are already doing that. We're in the process of implementing that because the credit agencies have tripled our fees and it's gotten out of control. And so right now we have zero application fee. At some point, I can expect that we're going to be charging a $50 or $75 application fee. We're not making any money on that, but I'm losing thousands of dollars paying for credit reports on behalf of people that I can't use the credit report that you get from Credit Karma. I have to pull it in the system. and I don't have any other choice but to order it when I get you pre-approved. Heather said the first time homebuyer class is $99. Yes, that is correct. Liliana, I know this is California only, but do I do loans or have other programs out of state? Yes. So I'm licensed in a few states. I've got peers within my company that cover about 41 of the 50 states. So yes, if you are doing something out of state, I don't just do down payment assistance. I do pretty much every type of loan, and I'd be honored to take care of you. Alonzo, you're actually on my list for tomorrow, so I'll be getting back to you tomorrow, my friend. All right, so we're at the point now for Q&A. This is, again, the QR code for starting the process. Also, go to californiadreamforall.info. Down at the bottom is a link to a Facebook page that I have created for this program. So if you are a Facebook user and you want to keep up to date on it, like that Facebook page. So it's actually California Dream for All. If you go to facebook.com/California Dream for All, that's my Facebook page. Or you can go to the website, californiadreamforall.info, and you can scroll to the bottom and it's got the link to the Facebook page. But at this point, I've covered a lot. And I know that you guys have hung with me. I've got about 95% of the people that started are still on there. So it's time for Q&A. I answered a lot of questions along the way, but I've got a couple minutes right now. Just remember, scan that QR code that I don't know where my head is compared to the QR code. Hopefully it's not blocking it, but scan that QR code or go to apply.johnloneking.com and let me know what questions you have, and I'll make sure to answer those right now. So Dylan says, anything less than 660 will be ineligible. Yes. Now I have a great tool. I have a credit simulator. My credit simulator, once I pull your credit, allows me to look at your balances, look at your credit and project, hey, if you pay this off, if you do that, if you open a new account, that will change your credit score. So when you are below that credit limit, and you're in a position where you say, John, I didn't even apply because I didn't think I could do it. What I can do is a soft credit pull. So truth is, it cost me $5 to do a soft credit pull on one credit bureau. I'll invest $5 in every single one of you. Little hesitant to invest $75 in each of you. I love you all, but that's a lot of money. Anyway, I can pull a soft credit pull, which means it doesn't impact your credit score at all. I can't use it for pre-approval, but I can use it when you say, John, I just don't know if I'm there. And there's a really big difference between the credit score that you get through Credit Karma, the credit score that you get through your Discover Card app, and a mortgage credit score. They're all different formulas. So don't say, oh, I'm at 680, John, because I had it. My Credit Karma says that. The only real way to know your credit score is A, go through me, or B, that myfico.com, FICO, FICO.com. I'm not affiliated. You have to pay them, not me. myfico.com, if you sign up with them, they give you all of the different types of credit scores, including your mortgage credit score. myfico.com is the only place to get your mortgage credit score unless you have me pull it. All right. Leo asked, by the way, Heather, brilliant URL grab. Thank you very much. I got it all. I got it on YouTube. I got California Dream for All on YouTube. I got californiadreamforall.info. I got Facebook's California Dream for All. Day one, I jumped on those. All right. Liliana asked, what about open credit lines? No, that's where Fannie Mae's system is going to, it's the black box. It's the computer deciding if it likes your overall credit history. Once somebody's over a 680, I did run some people with lower credit scores before I knew there was going to be the 680 limit. And those ones, they were looking, I saw some people that had thin credit or not many credit accounts. And those I saw were not getting approved. Pretty much anybody who's over a 680 with a 20% down payment, I'm seeing the system approve it, even with thin credit, but that isn't a guarantee. So there is no hard guaranteed credit score, trade line requirements. It's up to Fannie Mae's computer system. All right. Alonzo, for those who don't know, John has been amazing, continues to educate us. It's been very informative. Well, Alonzo, I appreciate that. You get $10 in Starbucks gift cards for that. Rachel says, how long does it take to up your credit score? For example, we pay off our credit cards. How long before it shows up on our score? So that's a great question. And credit, people, it's hard to understand all of this, but your credit score is updated. Your credit score is updated daily. Your balances from your credit card companies are updated once a month, and that day has nothing to do with your billing cycle. It has nothing to do with your statement date. It has nothing to do with your due date. It's just a day that that credit card company picked to update each month, because they have thousands of clients. They can't send one batch once a month with all thousands of people. So they break it up into one batch every day, and you happen to fit into one of those slots. Why does that matter, John? Because if you pay a credit card today, and yesterday was the day that they updated the credit agency, it's going to take 29 days. If you pay a credit card today and tomorrow's the day that that credit card updates the credit agency, it'll take 2 days, because it's the day after tomorrow that I'll be able to pull your credit. You can actually call your credit card companies and say, what is the date that you send my updated information to the credit agencies? And they will tell you the date. Make sure you make the payment before that date. If you miss it, then you know it's going to be a month. Dennis says, if we start with you, do we have to get a pre-approval letter from a lender? One we had in mind to contact before we knew about this loan, or will this cover everything? That's a great question, and I'm going to be careful how I answer it. Dennis, I am a lender. I get paid to lend money. And so I'm interviewing right now to be your lender. Let me be that direct. I want the job of being your lender. You can choose anybody that you want. Nobody's as good as I am. I'm kidding. No, I'm not. Anyway, you can choose any lender that you want. I will be the one that gets you a pre-approval letter. I will be the one. And by the way, if you choose somebody else, then that person's the one that gets you the pre-approval letter. That person is the one that's going to shepherd and guide you through the process, reserve the money for you, all of that stuff. And so if you talk to a lender before you knew about this loan and you like that lender and want to use that lender, by all means, use that lender. If you like how I'm helping you out and the information I'm providing, I am 100% interviewing to be your lender, and I would be honored if you choose me to do that. I will handle everything from start to finish for you. I appreciate that, Dennis. Dennis said I seem great. I think so too. Henry, how long do you get pre-approved from the program once you're pre-approved? So let me be clear, you're not pre-approved from the program, you're pre-approved from me. So my company is Summit Funding. See, it's right here on the lower end of the page right here. So I would be the one pre-approving you. The pre-approval is good for 60 days, but I can refresh that pretty easily, just making sure that nothing's changed about your credit and your income. And I can give you a brand new pre-approval for another 60 days. But that 60 days has nothing to do with the money running out. If you're pre-approved for 60 days and you get a contract on day 3, the money might already be gone, because my pre-approval does not reserve the money from the state. Nobody's does. The reservation of the money from the state comes when you're in contract, and then I lock your interest rate and reserve your money at the same time. So the pre-approval is 60 days. It's pretty easy for me to refresh it if you don't find a home in 60 days, but it has nothing to do with the reservation or guarantee of this money. We want to get you pre-approved as quickly as possible, and we want you to find his home as quickly as possible, because again, I only see this helping 23 to 2,500 families, and the money's going to go relatively quickly. I know, again, I've got 3 clients in escrow right now and a whole bunch out looking to make offers and buy homes right now. All right, so we are just about 18 minutes over past the hour. Henry, what happens next once you are pre-approved? That's a great question that I go through probably 40 minutes of that in my masterclass. So go to youtube.com/JohnLoanKing and you'll see my masterclass from last week on Thursday, uploaded on our Friday. It's a 90-minute class. Chris says, how long does it take to get pre-approved? Well, it takes me about 2 hours of work, but I had 34 people on this call. I had 40 people on last week's call, and I had about 45 people on the call the week before. The good news is I'm busy. And the good news is I'm really good at what I do, but I'm not getting them done in 2 hours. So I'm moving through as quickly as I possibly can. I'm telling people that we're prioritizing based on how quickly you are. Something just happened to my screen. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know why that disappeared. Anyway, we're moving through as quickly as you possibly can to address these and get them pre-approved. Hopefully you guys can see me just fine. I got rid of the QR code in the back. You've had enough time to get it. If you didn't get it by then, go with a different lender. I'm just kidding. Call me, get a hold of me. I'll take care of you. Rewind in the recording. Anyway, Chris, I hope that answers your question. And then Henry was asking about what happens once you are pre-approved. The simple answer, Henry, is that you need to work with a realtor. If you have a realtor that you choose, great. If you don't have a realtor, I will help you find a realtor and provide you with some great resources. Picking a realtor is a critical decision. Once you pick a realtor, I need to be in communication with your realtor. I need to be talking to that realtor about how this program works. I actually created a web page, californiadreamforall.info/agents, AGENTS. That has 2 videos in it for realtors, so that when I give you a pre-approval letter, the realtor will be able to go there. It's printed on the pre-approval letter, and they'll be able to see information about the program and how it works. All right, how their teamwork makes the dream work. Absolutely. Robert asked about 15-year fixed. There is no 15-year fixed with Cal HFA. You can pay off in 15 years, but the rate is based on a 30-year loan. Lexi, you're very, very welcome, gang. Happy to answer questions, happy to get some feedback from you. Please share, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, both John Loan King and California Dream for All. So it's going to be youtube.com/John Loan King. That's my regular channel, and then youtube.com/California Dream for All. All right, and Liliana says, that's where you got my info, from a realtor a long time ago selling a property in Lodi that spoke very highly of me. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. I've been in the industry for 23 years now, and longevity does not mean that you're an expert, but it certainly helps in this industry that I've survived, and I've never left the industry in that 23 years. So guys, I really, really appreciate your time. I'm going to wrap up because I have a wife and 3 wonderful children upstairs that are waiting for me. So if there's any pressing questions, please reach out to me. All of my contact information you should already have. I really, really appreciate all of you tonight, and please help me share the word about this program. And if you haven't applied yet, you need to do that now. Apply.johnloanking.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.